At Thanksgiving dinner, my mother, with that familiar glint in her eye, tapped her glass, signaling the start of a carefully orchestrated performance where all attention would inevitably swing towards Lily. "Sister's wedding was simply divine," she announced, a touch too loudly, her gaze already fixed on my sister. "So, Kat," she continued, the question hanging heavy in the air, "when are we going to celebrate yours?" A smattering of nervous laughter rippled through the room. My father, ever the master of avoidance, remained steadfastly focused on carving the turkey, as if defusing a bomb. Lily, ever composed, offered no response. Her eyes, however, remained glued to mine, holding a mixture of curiosity and caution. They were still treading carefully, testing the waters. I placed my fork on the table, the clink echoing in the expectant silence. "I already had mine," I stated, my voice measured, betraying none of the turmoil within. "You all received invitations." The room plunged into a stillness so profound it felt almost tangible, the festive atmosphere instantly curdling. Then, my father, his voice barely a whisper, uttered the carefully prepared line, "We never received any." With a deliberate movement, I reached into my bag. This was it, the moment the carefully constructed facade would crumble. Growing up, I had learned early on that my family prized symmetry above all else. Perfect photos, perfect milestones, perfect stories to present to the outside world. And in each of those stories, Lily was undeniably the star. As a child, I didn't begrudge her the spotlight. I simply accepted it as the natural order of things. One child destined to shine, the other to recede into the background. But by the time we reached our teenage years, this so-called pattern had solidified into a rigid structure, an unyielding system. My mother meticulously curated Lily's life as if she were showcasing a prized collection in a showroom. From ballet classes to cheerleading tryouts, a dazzling gallery of awards proudly displayed along the hallway walls. Whenever I managed to achieve my own milestones, a science fair ribbon, a college acceptance letter, my mother would offer a polite smile, a perfunctory congratulations, then promptly inquire if we could postpone the celebratory photos, as she needed optimal lighting for Lily's upcoming headshots. Instead of fighting the current, I adapted, becoming adept at observation, learning to anticipate, and mastering the art of quiet survival. Seattle, in many ways, was my salvation. The move, a mere 3-hour drive away for a job, wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a desperate gasp for air. I began to build a life that was uniquely mine. It was a life centered around a small apartment with towering windows, stacks of research papers scattered across every surface, and shirts perpetually infused with the aroma of Ethan's morning coffee. My job, analyzing water and environmental data, might not impress the social circles my mother so desperately sought to infiltrate, but it held meaning, purpose. And Ethan, bless him, saw me in ways my own family never even attempted. He listened, truly listened. He remembered the smallest details. And his family, unlike mine, noticed me, not because I performed for them, but because they genuinely cared. The first time Helen, Ethan's mother, hugged me, she held on for more than just a fleeting moment, not like my mother, who released me as if she were simply checking a box on a list. Helen's embrace was warm, reassuring. She inquired about my work, remembering specifics from previous conversations. Robert, Ethan's father, did the same. They weren't perfect people, by any stretch, but they were present, engaged, and that, for me, was entirely new. So when Ethan proposed on a misty June morning by the water, the salty air thick with promise, I accepted without hesitation. We envisioned a celebration that wasn't a grand, ostentatious production. We chose a quaint coastal chapel, extended invitations to those who truly knew and cherished us, keeping everything simple, authentic. My sole desire, the one I harbored silently and stubbornly, was for my parents and Lily to be there, to choose me for once. I designed the invitations myself, meticulously crafted with love, had them printed well in advance, and mailed them with signature confirmation requested, knowing all too well my family's unfortunate tendency to misplace anything that didn't directly serve their ambitions. I triple-checked the addresses, obsessively refreshed the tracking numbers, almost as if it were a sacred ritual. When the tracking information confirmed that each package had been successfully delivered, I finally allowed myself to exhale, to feel a flicker of hope. But then, the silence descended, a suffocating blanket of indifference. No phone calls, no text messages, not even a perfunctory congrats in the family group chat. Weeks dissolved into months, the wedding came and went, and still, nothing. I concocted 100 different narratives to shield myself from the harsh reality. Perhaps the mail got rerouted, lost in the system. Maybe they were planning a grand surprise, a belated celebration. Perhaps they were simply waiting for the opportune moment. But deep down, a chilling suspicion began to take root. Someone had deliberately prevented those invitations from reaching their intended recipients. And I had no idea just how accurate my hunch was until that fateful Thanksgiving night. The silence following the wedding didn't simply dissipate, it festered, slowly poisoning every aspect of my life like an insidious leak. Initially, I adopted a wait-and-see approach, reasoning that people were busy, overwhelmed, and that they would eventually call, text, or at the very least, inquire as to why they hadn't received an invitation. But days morphed into weeks, and the silence transformed into something heavier, something deliberate, intentional. I attempted to reach out, placing a call to my mother, only to be greeted by her voicemail. A message to my father elicited a polite, albeit empty, promise that he would call me later, a call that never materialized. The group chat, the lifeline we had maintained since my college days, no longer displayed my name among the participants. It wasn't a boisterous removal, it was a silent, calculated erasure. I broached the subject with Ethan one evening while we were washing dishes, attempting to feign casualness. Maybe it's just a glitch, I suggested, but my voice betrayed my carefully constructed facade. He dried his hands, glanced at me, and asked gently, "Kat, did they ever acknowledge receiving the invitations at all?" I shook my head. Not even once. He didn't offer accusations, didn't press me for details. He simply said, "Let's check the logs." He guided me through the labyrinthine process of accessing email activity, something I never would have been able to navigate on my own. And there it was, stark and irrefutable, the access logs for the family email account. The wedding announcement email, opened, deleted, and permanently erased. The timestamp was damning. It wasn't a glitch, not a mere oversight. Someone had intentionally gone out of their way to ensure that no one saw my messages. The most agonizing part was that I already knew who was responsible. I could vividly imagine Lily standing in the kitchen of our childhood home, sifting through the mail as if she controlled the very flow of communication. She had always been the gatekeeper, the one mom entrusted with scheduling her appointments, the one dad relied on to sort the bills, the one who screened calls and determined what was worthy of interrupting dinner. If anything entered that house, it had to pass through Lily first. The more I analyzed the situation, the more the pieces clicked into place, forming a picture that made my stomach churn with a mixture of anger and betrayal. She was preparing for her own extravagant September wedding, boasting a guest list of 350, a designer gown, and customized everything. Her entire identity hinged on being the center of attention, basking in the spotlight. My wedding, even a small, intimate affair, had the potential to steal some of her thunder, to divert attention away from her carefully constructed narrative. And Lily, as I knew all too well, never shared the spotlight willingly. Still, I needed concrete evidence, so I pulled up the tracking receipts. I had diligently saved records of all 4 packages, including proof of shipment, my name as the sender, their address as the recipient, and the signature on delivery. One signature I recognized instantly, Lily's. I stared at the familiar loop of her handwriting, feeling my throat tighten with a wave of conflicting emotions. She hadn't simply forgotten, misplaced them. She had intercepted them, actively prevented anyone from knowing about my wedding. Ethan gently touched my arm. "Kat, what do you want to do?" I didn't have an immediate answer. Anger would have been easier, rage would have made sense. But what I felt was something far more profound, something sharp and ancient. A familiar wound tearing open once more. What do you do when the people you love, the people you expect to cherish you unconditionally, deliberately choose not to see you? Thanksgiving was fast approaching. I contemplated skipping it, allowing them to continue their charade, pretending that I didn't exist. But perpetuating the lie was precisely what had created this mess in the first place. So I made a conscious decision to confront them, to bring the truth to the surface. Thanksgiving always presented a picture of flawless perfection from the outside. White tablecloths, gleaming silverware, a candle flickering serenely in the center, resembling a spread from a magazine. But the moment I stepped through the door, I felt that familiar, unspoken tension settling over my shoulders like an old, unwelcome coat. Lily was already posing for photographs near the fireplace, her husband meticulously adjusting her hair as if they were shooting a holiday card. My mother fussed over the turkey, regaling anyone within earshot with every minute detail of Lily's upcoming September wedding. My father poured wine with a mechanical precision, his eyes already betraying a sense of weariness. Not a single person inquired about my well-being. Not one of them even acknowledged the wedding they had all so conveniently missed. I deliberately chose a seat at the table directly across from Lily. She avoided eye contact, her face an impenetrable mask. Silence can be a weapon, a carefully crafted performance, and she was a master of its manipulation. Dinner commenced with the usual script: effusive praise for Lily's dress, her venue, her elaborate guest list, her impressive connections. Each sentence served as a subtle reminder of their unwavering support for her, their willingness to show up without hesitation, while simultaneously highlighting their utter disregard for my own life-altering day. Then my mother, with that familiar glint in her eye, tapped her glass, signaling the start of a new act. "Sister's wedding was simply divine," she announced brightly, glancing at Lily as if seeking confirmation. "So, Kat," she continued, the question hanging heavy in the air, "when are we going to celebrate yours?" A smattering of nervous laughter rippled through the room. Even the turkey knife in my father's hand paused mid-slice, as if unsure of which side to take. Lily kept her eyes fixed on her plate, her body rigid, her silence more telling than any words could have been. For years I would have laughed it off, allowed the jab to slip under my skin, pretended it didn't hurt. But not this time. Not after everything they had buried, ignored, and actively suppressed. I placed my fork on the table, the clink echoing in the expectant silence. "I already had mine," I stated, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. 6 months ago. The shift in the room was immediate, visceral, as if all the air had been sucked out at once. I paused, allowing the silence to amplify the impact of my words, then added, "You all received invitations." Forks froze mid-air, eyes widened in disbelief. My mother's practiced smile faltered. My father blinked, as if he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. Across from me, Lily's face remained impassive, betraying nothing. That was the tell. She knew exactly where this was headed, and she was powerless to stop it. "Kat," my father said cautiously, his voice laced with a hint of warning, "we never received any invitations." There it was. The lie, the familiar deflection, the rehearsed narrative they had perfected over years of denial, without even realizing they were rehearsing it. I felt something within me finally settle, not anger, not revenge, but a sense of clarity, a long-awaited understanding. "I figured you'd say that," I replied softly, my voice devoid of emotion. I reached into my bag, my movements deliberate, unhurried, and placed my phone on the table. The screen illuminated the room, its light reflecting in the crystal stemware, the edges catching the candlelight like a blade. Every pair of eyes was riveted on it, drawn to it like moths to a flame. This was the line I had never dared to cross before, the boundary I had never been strong enough to define. This was the moment I would stop allowing myself to be rewritten, to be erased from my own family's history. And as I touched the screen to open the receipts, the truth swelled within my chest like a tidal wave, ready to crash against the carefully constructed shores of their reality. The moment my thumb made contact with the screen, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It wasn't a loud, chaotic eruption, but a chilling quiet, the kind that descends just before a storm levels a coastline. The receipts opened in a neat chronological list. 4 deliveries, 4 signatures, all marked as received. I zoomed in on the first one, rotating the phone so the entire table could see. The looping, confident signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Lily. My mother gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth in a theatrical gesture. My father leaned forward, as if he needed to see the truth up close to believe it. Ryan, Lily's husband, stiffened in his chair, his eyes darting between the screen and his wife, as if someone had suddenly spoken to her in a language he didn't understand. Lily remained motionless, her face a blank canvas. I could feel the frantic thumping of my pulse in my fingertips, but my voice remained calm, almost detached. These were delivered on April 23rd. I stated matter-of-factly, all 4 invitations signed for by Lily. Dead silence descended once more. But this time, it wasn't born of surprise, but of exposure, of being caught in a lie. Cat, my father whispered, his voice laced with desperation. This must be a mistake. It's not, I replied, swiping to the next screenshot. This is the tracking log from the Postal Service. Priority mail, signature required, all confirmed, all delivered. I paused, then added quietly, and all intercepted. My mother shook her head vehemently. No, that makes no sense. Lily would never. Oh, stop, I said gently, my voice devoid of any harshness, simply weary. You keep saying what Lily wouldn't do, but you never actually look at what she does. My words landed with a thud. My mother froze, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. Ryan finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Lily, did you sign for these? Lily blinked, her movements mechanical, like she was trying to reboot her expression. I don't remember. Maybe sometimes I grabbed the mail, but I didn't see any invitations. I remained silent, understanding long ago that silence can be more powerful than any accusation, so I simply allowed the tension to simmer. My father, his gaze locked on Lily, finally spoke. You didn't see 4 packages from your sister around the time you knew she was engaged? It's not my job to track everyone's mail. Lily snapped back, the first crack in her composure sharp enough to cut. It was the wrong move. My mother reached toward her, a gesture of comfort. Sweetheart, no, I said, my voice still eerily calm. Let her talk. She's been talking for years. Lily glared at me, her eyes filled with resentment. What's that supposed to mean? I ignored her question, swiping to the last screenshot, the email log Ethan had helped me access. This, I stated quietly, is the activity log for the family email account. The wedding announcement email I sent in April was opened from this house, then deleted immediately. My father's jaw tightened, his face etched with a mixture of anger and disappointment. Who has access to that account? Everyone at the table knew the answer. Everyone had always known the answer. Lily finally cracked, her carefully constructed facade shattering. I didn't delete anything, she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. She said it too fast. I tilted my head slightly, my expression unreadable. Then why does it show your device ID? Her mouth opened and closed, searching for a plausible explanation. Maybe I clicked it by accident? I don't know. Why are you attacking me? I'm not attacking you, I said, my voice still calm. I'm showing you what you did. My mother exhaled sharply, her eyes darting between Lily and me. Why would Lily ever hide your invitations? Why would she sabotage your wedding? That's ridiculous. There it was, the sentence she had been perfecting my entire life. The unwavering defense she used to excuse every bruise Lily had ever inflicted on me. Why? I repeated, my voice tinged with a hint of weariness. Because my wedding happened in June. Hers was in September. I turned to Lily, meeting her gaze head on. Because you didn't want anyone talking about mine before yours. Lily flinched, as if I had slapped her with the truth she had been desperately trying to outrun. That's insane, Lily hissed, her voice trembling. You always twist things to make me look bad. No, I said, my voice unwavering. You did that yourself. Ryan's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly, his face a mask of confusion and anger. Lily, is this true? She stared down at her napkin, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Everyone always thinks Kat is so innocent. She never needs anything. She never wants anything. She ruins nothing for anyone. She just exists and makes everyone feel. Makes everyone feel what? I asked softly, my voice barely above a whisper. She shot to her feet, her face contorted with rage. Feel guilty, feel small, feel like she doesn't even have to try. Ah, there it was. The real confession, the truth that had been festering beneath the surface for years. A truth not about the invitations, but about every year leading up to that moment. I leaned back slightly, absorbing her outburst. So you hid my wedding because, what? Because it was quiet? Because it didn't compete with your 6-tier cake and rented string quartet? That's not, she gasped, but the truth was already hanging in the air like smoke, suffocating them all. Kat, my father said desperately, his voice laced with regret. We didn't know. If we'd known, we would have. You would have come, I finished for him, the words laced with years of unspoken longing. After years of missing every milestone, after forgetting every birthday, after making sure Lily's needs always came first. He closed his eyes, unable to meet my gaze. My mother's face twisted, her expression a mixture of anger and pain. You can't put all that on us. We did our best. No, I said, my voice firm. You did your best for Lily. For me, you did the bare minimum and called it fairness. Lily sat down abruptly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Even she couldn't defend that. The weight of decades pressed into my chest, not as grief anymore, but as clarity, a sense of understanding that had eluded me for so long. I looked at each of them, the people I had silently begged for years to truly see me, to acknowledge my existence. And I finally spoke the truth, the words tumbling out of me like a dam finally breaking. I didn't lose my family tonight, I said, my voice resonating with a newfound strength. I just stopped pretending I had one. My mother gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. Kat, don't you dare talk like that. Why? I asked, my voice laced with challenge. Because it threatens the story you built? The one where Lily is perfect, Dad is neutral, you are the peacemaker, and I'm the problem. No one said you're the problem, Dad whispered, his voice barely audible. You didn't need to say it, I replied, my voice unwavering. You showed it over and over. Ryan sank back into his chair, his face pale, as if he were watching the pieces of his marriage rearrange themselves into a shape he didn't recognize. Lily whispered. Kat, please. That single word, please, carried the weight of years of fear, guilt, and the sudden realization that her control was gone, that the carefully constructed world she had created was crumbling around her. I stood slowly, pushing my chair back with a soft scrape against the floor. I'm done begging for a place at this table, I said, my voice clear and resolute. I'm done asking you to show up for me. I'm done pretending Lily's choices don't hurt me. I'm done accepting your silence as anything but agreement. I took a deep breath, allowing the truth to wash over me. I'm done. My father stood as well, reaching out towards me with a pleading look on his face. Kat, don't go, we can talk. We are talking, I said, my voice firm. The first time, and for the last time, under these terms. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears, her face etched with desperation. We can fix this. You can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. And you refused for years. I picked up my coat, feeling lighter with every inch, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I pulled it over my shoulders, the fabric a comforting shield against the cold. As I walked toward the door, I heard Lily sobbing quietly, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. I heard my mother mutter my name like a plea, her voice laced with regret. I heard my father say, we should have checked, we should have asked. But their remorse wasn't my responsibility anymore. I opened the door, the cold air rushing in, a refreshing contrast to the stifling atmosphere I was leaving behind, and paused just long enough to deliver my final message. You didn't miss my wedding, I said, my voice clear and unwavering. You chose not to see it. Then I stepped outside, letting the door close firmly behind me. Not loudly, not dramatically, but resolutely. A clean, final line drawn, and for the first time in my life, the silence that followed belonged to me. Ethan opened his door before I even reached it, as if he had been listening for my footsteps, anticipating my arrival. One look at my face, and he didn't ask what had happened. He simply wrapped his arms around me and held on, offering a silent, unwavering support until the shaking subsided. No questions, no judgment, just presence, something my family had never truly mastered. The next morning, his parents invited us over for a simple breakfast, a comforting ritual after the emotional turmoil of the previous night. No ceremony, no pity, just warm food, genuine conversation, and the kind of attention that didn't have to be earned, that was freely given. Helen squeezed my hand across the table, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. Your family here, she said, her voice filled with sincerity. Not because you married my son, but because you matter. A week later, Lily sent a lengthy email, a therapeutic outpouring of emotions, filled with soft apologies and more admissions than I had ever expected. I read it, carefully considering her words, but ultimately I chose not to reply. My father called every few days, his tone tentative, his words carefully chosen, small steps towards reconciliation. I allowed him to try, to navigate his way through the wreckage of years of denial and neglect. Then, one day, he found one of my wedding invitations buried in a storage box in the garage. irrefutable proof of everything I already knew. He mailed it to me quietly, without any commentary or explanation, simply acknowledging the truth. That was the closest he would ever come to offering an apology that felt genuine, an apology that acknowledged the depth of the pain he had caused. My mother never reached out, never attempted to bridge the gap. And for the first time, that absence didn't feel like a wound, a gaping hole in my heart. It felt like an answer, a definitive closure. I used to believe that family was something you protected at all costs, regardless of the emotional toll it exacted. But standing in my own home now, with Ethan cooking dinner, the sound of laughter drifting in from the friends I had chosen, friends who showed up for me every single day, I finally understood the profound truth. Family isn't defined by shared blood. It's defined by who shows up, who listens, who stays, who offers unwavering support in the face of adversity. And sometimes, the bravest, most empowering thing you can do is walk away from the people who have never learned how to truly hold you, to embrace the love and support you deserve. If any part of this story resonates with you, if you've experienced similar challenges, please share your story in the comments below and let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience, growth, and the unwavering pursuit of authentic connection.